In the annals of American history, yet another name shines with unwavering dedication to serving others. The 39th President of the United States, Jimmy Carter. Born on October 1st, 1924, in the humble town of Plains, Georgia. Earl, his father, managed a peanut plantation and warehouse. Miss Lillian, his mother, worked as a registered nurse in Wise Sanitarium. She later became well known for her work as a Peace Corps volunteer in India during Jimmy's presidency. He grew up amidst the verdant fields, thus in his father's peanut farm. He learned the values of hard work, honesty, and empathy. Jimmy naturally had an insatiable appetite for learning. Education. From 1937 to 1941, he attended Plains High School in Plains, Georgia. In spite of the Great Depression of the time, the Carter family, like many others, profited from New Deal agriculture subsidies. Jimmy was distinguished by his love of reading and his dedication to his academics. Jimmy Carter was a superb athlete and played on the school basketball team where he demonstrated his competitive spirit and teamwork talents. His membership in the Future Farmers of America also fueled his interest in carpentry. Carter began his undergraduate engineering studies at Georgia Southwestern College in 1941 in pursuit of his aim of attending the United States Naval Academy. He transferred to the Georgia Institute of Technology in Atlanta the next year, where his passion and intellectual prowess came through. Jimmy Carter's dreams came true in 1943 when he was admitted to the prestigious United States Naval Academy. Despite his reticent and quiet demeanor, he excelled academically. His dedication to the virtues of honor and honesty distinguished him. Jimmy met Rosalind Smith, a friend of his sister Ruth. They fell in love and became life partners, a source of strength for his journey ahead. Jimmy married Rosalind Smith on July 7, 1946, in the Plains Methodist Church, the church of Rosalind's family. They will later on have 3 sons, Jack, James III, Donald, and daughter Amy. Jimmy Carter proudly graduated from the United States Naval Academy, ranking 60th out of 821 midshipmen in the class of 1947. His exceptional achievement earned him a Bachelor of Science degree and a commission as an ensign. Naval Academy and early career. Jimmy Carter began his officer training for submarine duty in 1948, kicking off a spectacular chapter in his Navy career. He served on the USS Pomfret and was swiftly promoted to lieutenant junior grade in 1949. He participated in a simulated war patrol to the Western Pacific and the Chinese coast, displaying his commitment and abilities. Carter was deployed aboard the diesel-electric submarine USS K-1 or SSK-1 in 1951. His outstanding performance qualified him for command, and he held a variety of jobs, including executive officer. This part of his career demonstrated his leadership talents as well as his dedication to serving his country. In 1952, he began working with the Navy's fledgling nuclear submarine program, which was led at the time by Captain Hyman G. Rickover. An accident with the experimental NRX reactor at Atomic Energy of Canada's Chalk River Laboratories produced a partial meltdown, flooding the reactor building's basement with millions of liters of radioactive water. As a result, the reactor's core was destroyed. Carter was sent to Chalk River to oversee a U.S. maintenance group that worked alongside other American and Canadian service members to help shut down the reactor. Carter stated during and after his presidency that his experiences at Chalk River affected his ideas on atomic energy and drove him to discontinue development of a neutron bomb. Carter enrolled in Nuclear Power School, a 6-month non-credit course studying nuclear power plant operating at Union College in Schenectady in March 1953. His goal was to eventually work aboard the USS Seawolf, which was to be the second nuclear submarine built in the United States. His plan did not unfold as anticipated after his father died of pancreatic cancer in July, 2 months before construction of Seawolf began. Carter was released from active service to take over the family peanut company. He was discharged from the Army on October 9, 1953. He was a lieutenant in the inactive Navy Reserve when he left the service in 1961. The American Campaign Medal, World War II Victory Medal, China Service Medal, and National Defense Service Medal are among his honors. He also received the Dolphin Badge as a submarine officer. Return to Plains. Life in the peanut plantation. Jimmy Carter has very little for inheritance after paying debts and dividing his father's estate among his heirs. The Carter family, including Rosalind and their 3 sons, were forced to live in Plains public housing for a year due to financial constraints. Despite the difficult circumstances, Carter's grasp of scientific and technological issues fueled his desire to build their peanut-growing enterprise. A terrible drought struck in the first year of business, resulting in a lost harvest. Carter had to open many bank lines of credit to keep the farm afloat. Simultaneously, he devoted himself to learning about agriculture through classes and considerable reading, while Rosalind studied accounting to manage the company's finances. They steadily grew their business and eventually achieved remarkable success in the peanut industry. Political aspirations. As racial tensions in Plains exacerbated by the 1954 United States Supreme Court decision in Brown Board of Education, Carter advocated for racial tolerance and integration, but generally kept his sentiments to himself in order to avoid creating enemies. As a member of the Baptist Church and chairman of the Sumter County School Board by 1961, he began to speak more openly about integration. Carter announced his candidacy for an available Georgia State Senate seat 15 days before the election in 1962. Rosalind, who had a natural knack for politics and organization, was invaluable to his campaign. Early ballot counting showed Carter losing his opponent Homer Moore. However, this was due to fraudulent voting conducted by Joe Hurst, the head of the Quitman County Democratic Party. Carter disputed the election results, which were later found to be fraudulent. Following that, a new election was held, and Carter defeated Moore as the lone Democratic candidate by a vote margin of 3,013 to 2,182. When Bo Calloway was elected to the United States House of Representatives in 1964, Carter immediately planned to run against him. Carter saw Calloway, who had moved to the Republican Party, as a challenger who embodied aspects of politics that he detested. Carter was re-elected to a second 2-year term in the state Senate, where he chaired the Education Committee and later served on the Appropriations Committee. Carter later announced his candidacy for the House of Representatives on the penultimate day of the term. However, Calloway chose to run for governor of Georgia, and Carter abandoned his own attempts, also deciding to run for governor. Georgia Governorship, 1971 to 1975. On January 12, 1971, Carter was sworn in as Georgia's 76th governor. In his inauguration address, he announced that the time of racial discrimination is over, startling the audience and leaving many segregationists who had supported Carter during the campaign feeling misled. Carter was unwilling to communicate with his colleagues, making him unpopular in the chamber. Carter stated on March 1, 1972, that if the Justice Department chose to reject any reapportionment plans by either the House or state, a special session of the General Assembly might be called. Carter pushed various reforms through the legislature, including equitable state financing to schools in Georgia's wealthy and poor communities, the establishment of community centers for mentally handicapped children, and the expansion of educational programs for incarcerated people. Carter prioritized civil rights, adding black state employees and pictures of 3 important black Georgians to the state capitol building: Martin Luther King Jr., Lucy Craft Laney, and Henry McNeil Turner. On a televised joint appearance with Florida Governor Ruben Askew on January 31, 1973, he proposed a constitutional amendment to prohibit busing in order to expedite school integration, and he co-sponsored an anti-busing motion with Wallace at the 1971 National Governors Conference. Carter would meet with his fledgling campaign staff on a regular basis, and finally decided to launch a presidential campaign in 1976. In April 1973, he was appointed to the Trilateral Commission with the support of David Rockefeller. He was chosen chairman of the Democratic National Committee's congressional and gubernatorial campaigns the following year. This gave him more visibility. 1976 Presidential Campaign. Jimmy Carter announced his presidential campaign on December 12, 1974, at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. His address focused on domestic inequity, optimism, and progress. He was up against 16 other candidates, and was thought to have little chance against more well-known politicians like Wallace. With the Watergate affair still fresh in voters' minds, Carter's status as an outsider, far from Washington, D.C., was advantageous. He advocated for government restructuring, a good strategy for me. He further released a memoir titled Why Not the Best in June to help introduce himself to the American public. Carter chose U.S. Senator Walter Mondale as his running mate on July 15, 1976. Carter and Ford squared off in 3 television debates, the first presidential debates in the United States since 1960. Carter started the election with a significant advantage against Ford, who closed the distance over the campaign, but fell to Carter in a close victory on November 2, 1976. Carter received 50.1% of the popular vote to Ford's 48% and 297 electoral votes to Ford's 240. Presidency, 1977 to 1981. On January 20th, 1977, Carter was sworn in as the 39th President of the United States to begin another remarkable phase of his life. Carter's first move was to fulfill a campaign pledge by releasing Proclamation 4483, which declared unconditional amnesty for Vietnam War draft evaders. Jimmy Carter's presidency was no walk in the park, as it was characterized by an economic malaise, continued inflation and recession, and the 1979 energy crisis. Carter worked to defuse several world crises, most notably in the Middle East, by signing the Camp David Accords, returning the Panama Canal to Panama, and negotiating the SALT II nuclear armaments reduction accord with Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev. His final year was marred by the Iran hostage crisis, which contributed to his election loss to Ronald Reagan in 1980. Jimmy was instrumental in salvaging the U.S. energy crisis during his tenure. He encouraged energy conservation and installed solar water heating panels on the White House. Carter signed the Department of Energy Organization Act in 1977, creating the first new cabinet position in 11 years. He claimed that the House of Representatives had adopted almost all of his 5-month-old energy package, calling the deal a turning point in establishing a comprehensive energy program. Carter's presidency had a problematic economic history that was essentially divided into 2 phases. The first 2 years were spent recovering from the severe 1973-75 recession, which had reduced fixed investment to its lowest level since the 1970 crisis and left unemployment at 9%. 2 years of his tenure were distinguished by double-digit inflation, extremely high interest rates, energy shortages, and poor economic growth. The $30 billion economic stimulus legislation proposed by Carter was a lifesaver. Amidst all these challenges, Carter signed the Airline Deregulation Act into law. The fundamental goal of the act was to abolish government control over commercial aviation pricing, routes, and market entry of new carriers on October 24, 1978. Carter deregulated the American beer industry in 1979 by making it permissible to sell malt, hops, and yeast to American home brewers for the first time since the country's effective prohibition began in 1920. This liberalization resulted in an increase in home brewing in the 1980s and 1990s, which blossomed into a significant craft microbrew culture in the United States by the 2000s, with 9,118 microbreweries, brew pubs, and regional craft breweries in the United States by the end of 2021. In education, Carter worked with Congress to make good on his campaign promise to establish a cabinet-level education agency. On February 8, 1979, the Carter administration issued an overview of their intention to establish an education department, claiming sufficient support for passage by June that same year. President Jimmy Carter increased the number of Head Start children and families by 43,000, while the percentage of non-defense funds spent on education was doubled. These are amongst many other achievements during his tenure as the United States President. International relations as a U.S. President. President Jimmy Carter continued to strengthen relations with the international community. From the onset of his presidency, Carter attempted to mediate the Arab-Israeli conflict. With Africa, Carter declared the United States' goal in seeing a strong, vigorous, free, and prosperous Africa with as much of the control of the government as possible in the hands of the residents of your countries, in an address to African officials at the United Nations on October 4, 1977. Carter visited Nigeria from March 31st to April 3, 1978, to improve relations, making him the first U.S. president to do so. In East Asia, Carter sought deeper ties with the People's Republic of China, carrying on Nixon's extreme strategy of rapprochement. The two countries became increasingly allied against the Soviet Union, and the Carter administration tactily approved of China's invasion of Vietnam. Despite human rights crimes in East Timor, the United States continued to assist Indonesia as a Cold War ally during Carter's presidency. Carter met with South Korean President Park Chung-hee at the Blue House from June 30th to July 1st, 1979, to discuss bilateral relations, as well as Carter's desire to maintain his program of global tension reduction. In Iran, on November 15, 1977, Carter stated that his government will maintain cordial relations with Iran, describing its current condition as strong, stable, and progressive. On December 31, 1977, he referred to Iran as an island of stability made possible by the admiration and love your people give to the Shah. On April 24, 1980, Carter ordered Operation Eagle Claw to try to free the hostages. A declassified memo created by the CIA in 1980, released in 2017, indicated that Iranian hardliners, especially Ayatollah Khomeini, were determined to exploit the hostage issues to bring about President Carter's defeat in the November elections. Furthermore, Tehran wanted the world to believe that Imam Khomeini was responsible for President Carter's downfall and disgrace in 1980. 1980 presidential campaign. In 1980, Carter's re-election campaign focused mostly on opposing Ronald Reagan. Reagan's tendency for gaffes was repeatedly highlighted and criticized by the Carter campaign, which used his age and perceived lack of connection to his native California support base against him. Carter attempted to restrict the Reagan campaign $29.4 million in campaign money, equal to $104,419,871 in 2022, because dependent conservative groups had already raised $60 million to get him elected, a figure that exceeded the campaign fund limit. The Federal Election Commission later denied Carter's bid. Due to Carter's refusal to engage in debates with Anderson, Carter and Reagan attended the lone presidential debate of the election season on October 28th. Reagan saw a spike in polling following the debate, although initially behind Carter by several points. It was later revealed that in the last days of the campaign, Reagan's staff obtained sensitive materials utilized by Carter in preparation for the debate. Reagan easily defeated Carter, earning 489 electoral votes. For the first time since 1952, the Senate went Republican. Carter recognized in his concession address that the election result had harmed him, but he promised a very fine transition period with President-elect Reagan. Post-presidency. Carter began his first year out of office by promising not to criticize the new Reagan government, since it was too early. He supported Reagan on matters such as the development of neutron weapons following the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, but frequently came out against his administration, condemning many of its activities in the Middle East. In 1987, Carter argued that he was incapable of keeping peace in the Middle East. His allegiance switched to diplomacy. President Bill Clinton requested Carter's assistance on a North Korea peace trip in 1994, during which Carter negotiated an agreement with Kim Il-sung. Carter went on to outline a deal with Kim, which he presented to CNN without the Clinton administration's permission in order to encourage American action. He visited Taiwan in March of 1999 and met with President Lee Teng-hui. Carter commended Taiwan's accomplishments in democracy, human rights, the economy, culture, science, and technology during his meeting with Lee. Carter highlighted his issues with Israel's domestic and foreign policies while stating his support for the country in 2006, expanding his objections to Israel's activities in Lebanon, the West Bank, and Gaza. Carter joined Nelson Mandela in Johannesburg, South Africa in July 2007 to announce his membership in the Elders, a group of independent global leaders that collaborate on peace and human rights problems. Following the announcement, Carter traveled to Darfur, Sudan, Cyprus, the Korean Peninsula, and the Middle East, among other places. Family life after presidency. Jimmy will sadly see all his three younger siblings die before him. Gloria Spann from 1926 to 1990, Ruth Stapleton from 1929 to 1983, and Billy Carter from 1937 to 1988, who all died of pancreatic cancer. Jimmy and Rosalind's three sons, Jack, James III, and Donald, and daughter Amy will give them 9 grandsons, one of whom is deceased, 3 granddaughters, 5 great-grandsons, and 8 great-granddaughters. On July 7th, 2023, the Carters celebrated their 77th wedding anniversary. On October 19th, 2019, they now surpassed George and Barbara Bush to become the longest married presidential pair, having been married for 27,130 days. Even though battling with many health conditions, Jimmy Carter has become the oldest president to ever attend an American presidential inauguration in 2017, at the age of 92, and the first to live to see the 40th anniversary of his own inauguration. He is medically advised to remain at home with his family in Plains to receive hospice care instead of additional medical intervention. Carter has empathetically asked President Biden to deliver his eulogy following his death. Jimmy Carter has officially became the nation's longest living president when he surpassed the lifespan of George H.W. Bush, who died at the age of 94 years. He has requested that he be buried in front of his home on 209 Woodland Drive in Plains, Georgia. With such undeniably great achievements, he has been honored by many individuals and societies, like the Golden Plate Award from the American Academy in 1984. The Jimmy Carter Library and Museum first opened its doors in 1986. The Jimmy Carter National Historical Park was created as a National Historic Site the next year and became a National Historic Park in 2021. Carter was elected to the American Philosophical Society and appointed an honorary member of Phi Beta Kappa at Kansas State University in 1991. The third and final Seawolf-class submarine was named after Carter in his service as a submariner officer in 1998. He was awarded the United Nations Prize in the field of human rights in recognition of his human rights achievements, as well as the Hoover Medal, which recognizes engineers who have contributed to global concerns. Carter received the Nobel Peace Prize in 2002 in response to President George W. Bush's threats to invade Iraq and Carter's criticism of the Bush government. Sutter Field Airport near Americus, Georgia, was renamed Jimmy Carter Regional Airport in 2009. Carter has also earned 3 Grammy Awards for Best Spoken Word Album for audio recordings of his books, including Our Endangered Values, America's Moral Crisis in 2007, A Full Life, Reflections at 90 in 2016, and Faith, A Journey for All in 2019. As the final applause thunders through the air, the mark of Jimmy Carter's great sacrifices and achievements become indelible. His life exemplified the extraordinary power of selflessness and the pursuit of a better world. From the humble beginnings of a peanut farmer to the corridors of power, he has dedicated himself to breaking down barriers, healing wounds, and sowing seeds of hope. Jimmy Carter's journey left an enduring mark on history, a reminder that the mark of greatness lies not in personal accolades, but in the lives touched, the love shared, and the unwavering commitment to making the world a better place for all. Share with us in the comments section your Carter story. We will be glad to know and help document history better. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification icon to receive updates on content like this. Leave a mark of greatness wherever you find yourself.